Hey everyone, and welcome back to the History Reader. In today's video we are doing the final installment of my discussion about Stephen Kotkin's Stalin Waiting for Hitler 1929 to 1941. So for those who haven't seen the other videos I've done on this, I'm talking about the third part of this book. I've done a video on parts 1 and part 2. I've also done a video on this book, the first volume of the biography. So those are all on my channel if you want to watch them. But today we're talking about part 3 here, which is really about the outbreak of war and how Stalin approaches his foreign policy during this period, and how his personality that we've seen being built up during the earlier parts of the book, how that influences the way he approaches things during these years. So the book really opens with the build-up towards the outbreak of war, the invasion of Czechoslovakia, the Anschluss in Austria, and the eventual invasion of Poland, and culminating really obviously with that invasion of Poland, but also the Nazi-Soviet pact. And obviously we've seen this incredibly ideologically driven guy all the way through the first two parts of the book, but also a very, very paranoid person. The argument that Kotkin makes for why Stalin decides to make this pact with Hitler is that the way he sees things is he wants to cause a division in the capitalist imperialist West. He is incredibly anxious and paranoid that the capitalist states of Britain, France, Germany are going to turn on him and attack him, or at the very least that there will be a non-aggression pact or a peace made between Britain and Germany. So Kotkin argues that in Stalin's mind, the model that he's building here is that it's a competition to win over Hitler between him and Chamberlain. And the person who's able to win over Hitler and get that non-aggression pact, get that peace, is the person who is going to come out on top here. And so the first section of this third part is about that battle. And this is talking about a huge area of foreign policy during this period. And we're seeing it purely from Stalin's perspective. There's a lot here, and Kotkin handles it fairly well. You've got to look into what's happening within the Hitler's inner circle, what's happening within Chamberlain's inner circle, what's happening within the British government, all these things, as to why eventually this pact gets signed with between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. It doesn't seem like Britain's really got their heart in signing this pact. They seem to be dealing with Germany in a way that they're appeasing Hitler, and they feel like if they appease him and appease him and appease him, they're not going to get to war. But there's no deterrence. And this is the argument that eventually Kotkin circles back around to, that Stalin is working with a deterrence element as well as the appeasement element. And it's what we get around to towards the end of the section. The middle section is really about the Winter War up against Finland, how that is a massive embarrassment to Stalin and the Soviet Union, how the war happens and it's kind of a little bit of a proxy war between Germany and the Soviet Union. It's kind of a warm-up. It certainly exposes a lot of the weaknesses in the Soviet Union's military power, but it's kind of ancillary. There's still just this tension with Hitler that's happening on that border, and the fighting that's happening for influence across that Eastern European that strip between Germany and what was then the Soviet Union. Obviously the borders do move eastwards over time, westwards over time, but really the crux of the book, the crux of this entire book, comes to this final 200 pages or so, where Hitler is gearing up to invade the Soviet Union, and Stalin just misses it, entirely misses it. And Kotkin offers a few explanations, and the first one is obviously Stalin's paranoia. Kotkin talks about this paranoia all the way through. In the first section, we saw the paranoia as driving the collectivization and dekulakization. In part 2, we see that paranoia driving the purges and the terror. And in part 3 now, we see that paranoia driving this massive blunder that Stalin makes, in that he doesn't prepare enough for the invasion that is inevitably coming. And quite interestingly, it's because he's so paranoid and because he's gathering so much intelligence that the Germans, Kotkin argues, that the Germans are able to take advantage of this. They feed in very specific disinformation about what's going to happen, whether they're going to attack or not. That's Stalin is able to uncover as being disinformation, but it makes him distrust everything. He feels like there are saboteurs in his intelligence networks. He stops trusting, like the Cambridge Five, he stops trusting. Even though he's getting the intelligence, and in those weeks before the invasion, he knows it, or he should have known that it was going to happen, but he misses it. He ignores it. There are even stories further down, this culture of feeling like everything that happens is an imperialist plot. And particularly, Stalin feels like Hitler is trying to catch him out. Hitler is trying to get a casus belli. Stalin feels like Hitler wants to go to war and he's trying to catch Stalin out as being the aggressor. And this is really what causes that massive failure to prepare for the invasion. He doesn't want to prepare too hard because he doesn't want Hitler to take it as a reason to go to war. And there's so many examples of this. There's examples of soldiers not responding to things that they should have responded to because of the culture that was baked in. And look, this is a very big book. There's a lot of detail in it. But I think the biggest takeaway is that Stalin's paranoia was the reason he was able to build the Soviet Union to what he built it. The way he built that personal rule was because of his paranoia. He couldn't let things go. But it's also because of his paranoia that things went incredibly, incredibly wrong. And I think that's really the lesson here. Thanks for watching all these videos. Obviously, I've not scratched the surface. This is a masterful work of history. There's a lot in here. I couldn't do it really in this format to really get through it. I'm going to have to read it several more times to really fully absorb everything. But I hope I've given you some idea of what's in these books. It is certainly very intimidating to pick it up, and I fully feel that. But it is doable. Kotkin writes in quite a clear way that you can break down these themes, and it's not something to be too scared about. So hope you took something from these videos. If you have any feedback, please leave it below, and I'll see you in the next video talking about another book. Thanks for watching. Bye.